Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're diving into one of the toughest questions for anyone who picks up the Bible. How in the world do we make sense of its darkest, most violent parts? You know, anyone who's actually tried to read the Bible cover to cover probably knows this feeling. You start in Genesis, things are going okay, and then bam, you're hit with this jarring question. Is this supposed to be a holy book, or is it kind of a horror story? I mean, the text is filled with stuff that's just deeply, deeply troubling for us today. We're talking about divinely ordered genocide, stories like the conquest of Jericho. And then there are these commands that test our entire sense of morality, like God telling Abraham to sacrifice his own son. You can't help but ask, what kind of God is this? So yeah, that's the central mystery we're going to try and unpack today. Why does this sacred text, this bedrock of faith for billions of people, contain so much violence, so much wrath, and so many things that just seem to flat out contradict each other? Now, this isn't a new problem, not at all. For centuries, people have wrestled with these passages. But our guide for this explainer, the scholar Magnar Cartvedt, he argues that the first clue to solving this whole puzzle, well, it isn't found in theology. It's actually found in psychology. So this first clue, it comes from a fascinating psychological quirk that you've probably experienced yourself without even knowing it. It's called inattentional blindness. There's this famous experiment that shows exactly how it works, and it's wild. It reveals how our own focus can literally make us blind to what's right in front of our eyes. Okay, so picture this. In the experiment, they show people a video of two teams passing basketballs, and they say your job is to count the passes made by the team in white. Seems simple. But here's the twist. While you're laser focused on counting, a person in a full-on gorilla costume walks right into the middle of the game, thumps their chest, and just walks off. And the shocking part, about half the people who watch it are so busy counting that they never ever see the gorilla. It's like it was invisible. So this is where the author makes this incredible connection. He basically says, yep, that was me. He admits that for years he was so focused on reading the Bible for all the comforting, positive, familiar stories that he was completely blind to the gorilla in the room, all those violent, troubling passages that were there the whole time. And the implication of that is just huge. It suggests that many of us, maybe for generations, have been reading with these unintentional blinders on. We come to the text expecting stories of love and redemption, and that very expectation makes us miss or ignore the parts that challenge it. Okay, so if we're all a little bit blind, how do we start to see clearly? Well, Cartvedt argues that the Bible itself gives us a massive clue on how to read it, and it's hidden in plain sight, right there on page 1. This is something that most people just read right over. But get this, the book of Genesis doesn't have one creation story. It has two. And they're put right next to each other, back to back, in a way that makes them totally impossible to stitch together into one single story. I mean, just look at how different they are when you put them side by side. In Genesis 1, the world starts as this watery chaos. The order of life is plants, then animals, then man and woman are created together. God is this distant cosmic force. But then you flip the page to Genesis 2, and the world starts as a barren desert. And the order is completely reversed. First man, then plants, then animals, and finally woman. And God is this really personal, hands-on craftsman. They're totally different. So the crucial point here is, this wasn't a mistake. It's not like some ancient scribe just messed up and pasted the wrong thing in. Cartvedt argues this is an intentional signal. It's a blueprint for how to read the rest of the book. It's the Bible shouting at us from the very first page. Hey, do not expect a single, neat, harmonious voice here. Expect a conversation. Expect disagreement. And that realization that the contradictions are there on purpose, that leads us to the central metaphor that really unlocks this whole thing. And that's viewing the Bible not as a single book, but as a cathedral. Cartvedt's big idea is that the Bible is like a grand ancient cathedral, one that was built and added to and renovated over hundreds, even thousands of years. And this image just nails it, doesn't it? Think about it. When you walk into an old European cathedral, you don't see just one style. You see these ancient Romanesque foundations from the 11th century, right next to soaring Gothic spires from the 13th. And then there's this ornate Baroque altar that was added in the 17th. They all come from different times, with different ideas about art and God, but they all exist together under one roof. And that is exactly how we should think about the Bible. It was written over more than 1,000 years by countless different authors and communities. It's not one book, it's a library. And this is the key. The voices in that library don't always agree. In fact, a lot of the time, they're actively arguing with each other. So, what does this whole cathedral idea mean for those dark, violent passages we started with? This stuff about holy war and genocide? Well, it completely reframes the problem. Those texts, they aren't the final word of the Bible. They are one voice in the Bible. They represent one perspective from one particular time in Israel's history. And if you look elsewhere in the cathedral, you find other voices from other times that are pushing back, arguing for something completely different, for justice, for mercy, for loving the outsider. This gives us a totally new game plan for reading. Instead of trying to flatten everything out and make it all agree, our job is to find the conversation. To ask, okay, where is this voice coming from? And which other text, in some other part of the Bible, is it arguing with? Suddenly, the text isn't flat anymore. It's this deep, dynamic, centuries-long debate. So, in the end, this perspective invites us to approach the Bible in a much more mature, more interesting way. Maybe it was never meant to be a simple answer book or a neat little rule book. Maybe it's something way more powerful, a living, breathing, and often contentious record of humanity's long and difficult search for God and for meaning. And maybe the real wisdom isn't in picking one voice and ignoring the rest, but in learning to listen to the entire argument